Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, January the 2nd. And welcome to our commentary. Welcome to our very special show with a special friend, Barry Casselman, the Prairie editor. We have done many of these shows before with Barry, where we look at the year in review or we look at trends and tendencies in our politics. So tonight we're going to be looking at this country from 2025 to 2026. Barry just posted a fascinating article about all of this, and we'll get into it with him. So, Barry, Happy New Year and welcome.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you so much. It's always a great honor to have you as a special guest with us. How is the weather up in the Twin Cities?
Cold and lots of snow.
Okay. Well, it's not that way down here, but we've had a lot of ups and downs with the temperatures. So it's supposed to drop again, but obviously nothing like the Twin Cities. Well, the topic from 2025 to 2026, fascinating topic. You just wrote a post about this, and just give me, just a quick, just a quick overview of your article and why you wrote what you wrote and what was your point, Barry?
Well, my point was that a lot of the so-called establishment media, the biased anti-Trump, anti-conservative media, likes to portray virtually everything in a negative way. And the fact is that the year, which has slightly been less than a year because the inauguration, of course, was on January 20th, although in many ways he was the president even before that, de facto. But it's been actually a pretty positive year. There are some things unresolved. Of course, some things didn't go as planned. But generally speaking, we have left behind a period of incoherence and confusion and drift. And we are replacing it with a period of a very conservative direction led by the president.
Right. Let me just make a quick note to our viewers. If you're watching us by the video, we're talking to Barry by audio. So I just wanted to mention that. If you're listening to the audio, of course, there's no difference. But if you're watching by video over YouTube, then obviously what you're hearing Barry's voice, not the video of his as you see me speaking. All right. Well, the first year of Trump, Trump likes to say that he's been the most active president, and it's hard to argue with that. I don't remember any other, whether you like Trump or dislike Trump, I don't remember any presidency so dominating the politics. I mean, he is topic number one, Barry, every single day. I mean, the man has a mastery over attention that I've never seen before, Barry.
Well, he not only dominates the domestic scene, but he dominates the international scene. I just saw a piece which said that he's the real leader of Europe today. And the polls in all the European countries show that he has a higher positive rating than their own leaders.
Right.
So, and he's certainly put himself in virtually every dispute in the world and solved a few of them, temporarily halted a few others. And of course, there's a few that are pretty hard to solve and it may never be solved.
Right.
But he's certainly refocused American attention on the Western Hemisphere. The word from South America is extremely positive as one country after another, by free voting, democratic voting, are choosing conservative leaders. It began with Mr. Malai and went to Bolivia and Chile and Uruguay and it's Paraguay. In other words, all that's really left is Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, and Peru. And they say Peru will choose a conservative leader in the next election.
Right, and so will Colombia, by all accounts, as well, by everything I'm hearing.
And the result, as in, especially in Argentina, is that the applying of conservative principles, libertarian and conservative principles, has worked.
That's
and
right.
They have halted the runaway inflation and started restoring the Argentine economy and certainly the Argentine democracy. So it's a pretty hopeful sign. Trump has basically created what we call the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, and he is making it very difficult for China and any other superpower to infiltrate South America and impose socialist, leftist, communist, Marxist views on those countries, both on their economies and, of course, as authoritarian regimes.
One of the things that when he selected Senator Rubio as Secretary of State, this is exactly what I was hoping would happen, that Secretary Rubio would become the face of the Trump foreign policy in Latin America and would persuade a bunch of these countries that you're better off with the United States than with China, let's say. And if you look at how influential Secretary Rubio has been, to me, he's been the real star in that cabinet, Barry.
Well, he's certainly one of the top stars. I think the cabinet, in spite of the way they're characterized by some in the media, and of course by Democrats, has been pretty successful.
Yeah.
Partly because they're doing what Trump wants them to do. And what he learned the lesson from his first term was when he selected cabinet officers who weren't his people and who didn't agree with him. And so they were at cross purposes and they didn't accomplish very much.
Right. I think a good example of that was the Secretary of State in his first term, the gentleman from the oil business that he selected. It didn't seem to be a good fit for Trump. And the fact that he learned that lesson is extremely important. I also think another superstar in the cabinet, Barry, is the Secretary of Treasury, Bessent, who I think communicates and expresses the ideas of what Trump wants to do, even sometimes better than President Trump, Barry.
Well, he's here next week.
Oh, good.
I won't be alone with him, but I'll be at a luncheon with him, and I'll probably have a chance, certainly to hear him and maybe to talk to him. And I agree with you. I think he's been very impressive.
Yes, he really has been extremely impressive. I don't remember a Secretary of State and a Secretary of Treasury who have been so consequential in the first year of any of the, let's see, I go back to Lyndon Johnson, of any of the presidencies since Lyndon Johnson. I don't honestly remember any that have been as consequential as Bessent and Rubio. I mean, they've both been extremely successful. There's even talk of Secretary Rubio for president in 2028. That's pure speculation this early on. But let me ask you another question. What do you think of the role of the vice president here, Vice President Vance? How would you rate him?
Well, I was not a big Vance person initially, but he has demonstrated to me that there's a lot to him. He's very smart, and he is the overwhelming favorite to be the nominee in 28. So he's sort of the heir apparent.
Right.
And he's playing a major role, unlike other vice presidents, including Lyndon Johnson, who was basically ignored by Kennedy. He is playing a big role. And I think he's pretty conservative. And there are those who want to separate him from Trump, or two from MAGA, Making America Great Again movement, or even from the conservative base. But the fact is, I think he's, at this point, still has broad support. Now we've got to go through the midterms.
Right.
And Trump will probably, as I've written, emphasize foreign policy, because he'll want to have that as his legacy, and it'll be up to Vance and to Rubio and to other members of the cabinet to really create initiatives on domestic policy.
Right. Let me bring in, you mentioned the midterms, and I want to get to that too. But you also mentioned in your article that the Democrats had won some victories here recently in New Jersey, Virginia, maybe a couple of others, smaller elections, local or state elections. It sure looks to me like the Democrats are very inspired to vote, that they're ready to vote, as they say.
They may be, but they're also very divided.
Right.
And we've already seen, yesterday was the inauguration of the socialist Marxist mayor of New York, who has promised to get rid of rugged individualism.
Yes, incredible.
And is going to probably scare out a lot of the business community, which is the heart and soul of New York City. In the large metro areas, which have been more or less abandoned by a lot of the middle class, many of whom are conservative, there are no real, except a few notable exceptions across the country, they're very overwhelmingly Democratic. And the two states where Democrats won the governorship, New Jersey and Virginia, are basically Democratic states.
Right.
So although it wasn't bad news, it would be unfair to say the Democrats did badly. But the idea that somehow that is a signal of a resurgence, I think is not based on any reality.
Right.
So,
yeah, to me, it's just a lot of wishful thinking.
Yes. The outcome in 2026 will really be based on the state of the economy.
Right.
And we don't know where that is exactly yet.
Right.
Although there are signs that, in fact, the steps that the administration and Mr. Trump took early on this year are starting to pay off.
Right.
And the inflation is down, the national product is up, employment is up. There's a lot of positive signs. Now, it's not everything, and of course, things can always change. So you can't take anything for granted. But the fact of the matter is that it's more likely at this point to think that the economy is going to be in good shape rather than bad shape.
Right.
All. And that will be very good news for the president and for Democratic candidates in the Congress.
Right. If I had to make a prediction, and that's a very dangerous thing to do in January the 2nd, because so much time lies ahead, and you're right about the economy. If I had to make a prediction today, I would say the House is pretty much of a dead heat. 3 or 4 districts either way. Even if the Democrats win, there won't be any kind of a blue wave. On the Senate side, it looks like the Democrats' best 2 possibilities. Well, the best one is North Carolina, from what I can see, and the other one is the possibility of Maine. Although they've lost Maine before, they get their hopes up and then they lose because Senator Smith up there is so Senator Collins up there is so strong. She always defeats him. But those are the only 2, Maine and North Carolina, Barry, where I see them potentially picking up a seat. On the other hand, I think the Republicans could end up picking up Michigan. So at the end of the night, it may be a net of only 1 for the Democrats. That's kind of how I see it. But again, it is very early.
Well, I think it's very hard to imagine, barring a economic recession and collapse, for the Democrats to retake the Senate. I see the possibility of the Republicans having a net loss of 1, the same, or a pickup of 1 or 2. That's the range. And they will still control the Senate. And that means they will control confirmations and things of that sort.
Right. And the Supreme Court is another.
We know, Silvio, that even a 1 or 2 seat lead in the House is not good news for the other party.
Right.
And if the Democrats retake control, they would probably try to impeach the president. Won't go anywhere.
Right.
But it will make his ability to have his administration to get bills passed much more difficult. So even though for the last few years control of the House on both sides has been very narrow and will probably be so again, it's still very important to win the control of the House. And that, of course, as you point out, is up for grabs at this point. And like you, I'm not going to make any predictions because we don't know, for example, how all this unusual redistricting will work out, because several states have prematurely redistricted in ways that produced additional seats for them on both sides. We don't know how that's going to work out, and we don't know how many. There's only about 12 to 20 close races in the House this coming year, and we don't know how they're going to go.
Right.
So even though we're now in the same year that the election will take place, it's 10 months away.
Right.
And that's a lot of time when in fact you ought to have a presidential election and Mr. Trump will not be on the ballot.
Right. Yeah, it's 10 months away, and there's so many things up, so many balls up in the air. The economy is the biggest one, I think. You always have things that happen. You always have things that happen that are not in the radar. You go back a year ago. Who predicted a year ago, if we were doing this show a year ago, and I think we did one, we always do about this time of the year, but I would have never predicted that, let's say, Mr. Trump would win the popular vote a year ago, or that Mr. Biden would have to leave and be replaced by the vice president because of that terrible debate. So, I mean, there's always things that are going to happen. The assassination attempt on Mr. Trump. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we never know. And I don't, my guess, Barry, is that there's going to be something is going to happen in the next 6 months that is completely outside of the radar right now, that nobody can see it coming, Barry.
Probably so. It almost always happens that way.
That's exactly right. Let me also ask you a question about on the foreign policy. If you look at, for example, the Ukraine has become a very difficult problem. And maybe President Trump exceeded expectations during the campaign when he said, I'll get it done in 24 hours or whatever. I'm still optimistic that something is going to get done because I don't see either side benefiting from the bloodbath that we're watching there every week. But how would you rate President Trump's handling of that situation in Ukraine, Barry?
Well, I think other situations he has been more successful, including the Middle East, although that's not entirely resolved. And there's an incredible last minute development with the uprising in Tehran.
Yes, yes.
We have a new regime, in which case all bets are off. But in Ukraine, it's doesn't I don't as long as President Putin is determined to keep the pressure on militarily, I don't know how we resolve it.
Right.
I think the President Trump thought he could persuade or incentivize President Putin, but boy, he's turning out to be one very difficult figure, and he's willing to sacrifice many, many lives of his own people and the Ukrainian people. And I don't know how that gets resolved. President, of course, has been able to pretty much impose on Mr. Zelensky and the Europeans, in spite of the fact they aren't happy with the president's imposition, they are in a position to change it. And they have their own problems, which he also has pointed out, and they have a crisis of their own, not counting Russia.
Right.
And so what we have here is a very, very difficult situation. And it will take a very creative effort. And so far, in spite of all the verbiage, no one has been able to come up with a solution.
Well,
yeah. The president promised a little more than he could deliver, and this one may elude him.
Right.
In his second term.
Well, I think, like you said, Putin doesn't seem to care if he loses 1,000 soldiers a week, which apparently he is losing, from what I hear. And he just doesn't seem to care. Now, I think Ukraine is starting, again, this is just my observation, Ukraine is sounding a more conciliatory tone because I think they're starting, they cannot keep up with these losses. Right. They at some point they have to stop fighting. I mean, they're losing a lot of people as well. So hopefully common sense will prevail. But I'm more pessimistic about Ukraine now than I was a year ago, Barry.
And I am too.
Yeah. I think as long as you're dealing with Putin, there's also the reality that we're not going to send troops, and none of the Europeans are going to send troops. So, Putin realizes that he's got the upper hand right now, Barry.
Well, I don't know if he's got the upper hand, but he's in a position where he can continue indefinitely.
Right. Let me close by asking you two more questions, please. Of all the Democrats that you've seen over the last year, is there one that really stands out as a potential president or someone who could win in 2028, someone who could actually appeal to voters outside of the states that they should be winning anyway? Anybody stands out to you?
Well, the one that stands out the most probably can't be nominated, and that's Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania.
Right.
He seems to be a pretty level-headed guy, and he represents a state with a lot of electoral votes, but he's on the wrong side of some issues, and I don't think the far left of the Democratic Party will let him be nominated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the problem is that if that doesn't happen, I don't know who is out there. They don't really have a great bench. They have a few candidates. I don't think Governor Newsom is the ticket, is the answer.
No.
I think he may look good, but he's got the answer for a lot of problems
Right.
in California. And I think probably he could be nominated, but I don't think he could win.
And the other Democrat who's getting a lot of attention, well, maybe, I don't know if he's getting a lot of attention, but I've heard something about him, is Governor Bashir from Kentucky, because he's a red state governor. But I mean, he couldn't even deliver his own state if he was the candidate, you know?
Right. Well, I just don't see. I mean, the Democrats, when they produce, I mean, as the Harris candidacy showed, the Democrats are no longer the majority party,
right,
in presidential elections. And unless somebody knew, now, of course, Jimmy Carter appeared out of nowhere. Bill Clinton came out of nowhere.
Barack Obama
came out. So it's not impossible that somebody whose name we know but don't think of as a presidential candidate could emerge, especially after in the midterms. So I'm not closing any doors, but I think Vance has some work to do to really broaden his appeal. But I think that right now, it's 2028 is looking a little better for the Republicans than it is for the Democrats.
Right.
It's still very, very far away,
right,
and so much can change. And I think we need to get to the midterms and see what happens there before we start making any serious predictions and considerations of the 2028 race.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think all of this talk about 2028 is so premature that it really it doesn't make any sense. And my other question, Barry, is what has impressed you the most about President Trump? Is there any one quality that you've seen here in this last year that has impressed you about him?
Well, I think we many people, myself probably included initially, have misjudged him.
Yes.
He says all kinds of things, and he does it for effect. But everybody wants to take him literally. And of course, he does have a huge ego, and he's very egotistical sounding. So we forget that what he's really doing is he is really using his art of the deal. He's actually strategically working to get a result. And what's amazing is the guy is 79 years old.
Right.
They're trying to say he's slowing down. Well, obviously at 79, he's not what he was at 59.
Sure.
But the fact is that I don't remember a president as active, as involved in so much as he is. And those executive orders, it's a record.
Yes.
And it's really essentially almost entirely now erased the Biden and even a part of the Obama initiatives. he's created a whole new ball game.
Right.
And he's also involved in so many places throughout the world. And in some of the smaller disputes, he's actually solved them,
Right.
resolved them, and had success. And he has restored American power. He is restoring the military. He's restoring our reputation. We still have some major confrontations ahead with China, and even with Russia, perhaps. And I don't know what's going to happen. We have a late-breaking development in Iran, and we may wake up any day this next week or two and discover the problem is gone.
Right. No, it's amazing. I was listening to an economist just today say, imagine if there's a change in Iran and Venezuela in the next week. Imagine the impact that would have on the price of oil. It would drop dramatically. Gasoline would be much cheaper. But what has impressed me the most, Barry, about President Trump, and I had doubts about him too back in 2016. I did not vote for him in the Texas primary back then. But what has impressed me the most is his ability to take control of the microphone and basically dominate everything. I mean, the Democrats they're basically out in left field all the time because he's the one every single day, because he's talking to the media as much as he does. He dominates. I mean, he's the headline every day, Barry. And that's amazing.
And yet he's made them his prisoner.
Right.
They can't ignore him. They can't ignore him.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. He's the master of PR, even though he offends a lot of people, including his friends.
Right.
And people who like him find a lot of his things he says to be distasteful and petty, or so seeming. But the fact remains that he dominates. I mean, it's we're going to be an amazing letdown no matter who wins in 2028, because we have been used to such a dominant figure in the White House, and no one will be able to do what he has done.
No, and that's the thing. Whoever follows him, I think you're probably right. I think there's a very good chance that it could be Vance. His shoes are going to be so big to fill. I don't know how anybody can ever again, at least in a while, dominate politics like President Trump does. I've never seen anything like it. Well, Barry, I want to thank you so much, as always, first of all, for the great articles that you write. You can find your articles at theprairieeditor.com. And I'm a subscriber. I love your page. And I want to thank you for the articles that you write and everything that you do. And we love chatting with you. So let's make a date sometime in a few months and chat again, Barry.
Okay. Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
Thank you so much. Our good friend, Barry Casselman, known as the Prairie Editor, has been in the business for a long time. In fact, he was in the business when Richard Nixon was elected or reelected. I mean, that's over 50 years ago. So that gives you an idea of how many campaigns he's covered. But he's just a wonderful man, wonderful friend, and he really understands politics as well as anybody. And we're so privileged to have him join us from time to time just to get this input that you had a chance to listen to tonight. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good weekend, by the way. Bye-bye.